So you're all very welcome. The last in the series of 4 for youth and student skills sessions. So this one I was focusing on climbing. The first was a kind of discussion around different aspects of what we could do for you. The second on hill walking. The third then on scrambling, and this is the last one on climbing. So um, some of the topics, like I said, are more difficult to do online, and most of them are best done outside or at the climbing wall or at the crag. So what I've thought for today, because it's a meeting, people can dictate a bit more what happens anyway. They can ask for things, they can ask questions. If you don't understand something I'm saying, just put your hand up or give a nod, because I'm sure someone else in the room didn't get it as well. But what I thought I'd look at today is to talk a bit about the kind of the subjects of climbing, if you like, the options that you've got at the moment, stuff that you can do without any equipment, and that hopefully where you live, you can find somewhere in the vicinity that you could use to climb on. Some of the options you have in terms of pathways. So we talked last time about in the hill walking one about mountain skills, that you can go and learn some of the skills in a course or from a club member or something like that. But the same with rock climbing, you've got some options there. I'm going to have a look a little bit at some of the equipment, harness, helmets, or boots, ropes, racks, and so on. I'm going to mention some of the video skills videos that we already have there that you can utilize after this. But I wanted to spend a bit of time on movement skills. I thought that might be fun, getting you crawling around on your sitting room floor or wherever you are at the minute, just to kind of get moving a little bit in the session, because it's what it's about. It's not about sitting talking about it. And some of the games and things that you might be able to go off and use yourself with your one other person or one other household, or on the wall outside, or the tree you have in the garden, or whatever it might be. So something that you can actually do. And then we could have a look at some things like tying knots and different bits and pieces that you can do if you don't already know how to do some of those bits and pieces. And that's as far as I got, because I know we'll run out of time halfway through that lot. So, so just kind of at the beginning, I suppose, a lot of people walk first and then start climbing and scrambling around on difficult bits of the walk, and then start to go up maybe some of the steeper short sections to get to somewhere else, and then maybe think, well, why can't I go up through the cliff instead of having to go around everything? Other people maybe head down to the climbing wall from a school session, or they go on a trip away in school, and they discover they love climbing, or the abseil tower, or whatever it is, and they just think it's brilliant. And so then they come back home and try and find somewhere to go, like the climbing wall, or a youth club that's nearby, or a walking club that does a bit of climbing, and so on. So bouldering is something that I would have done a lot of as a kid without knowing that's what I was doing. Climbing fences, walls, railings, up kind of old chimneys, across bridges, anything I could find, trees, anything at all I could find. My first set of lines in school were, I must not climb trees on the junior garden. And I had to write it out 100 times because the junior garden was off limits. And I spelt climb with a K. I was devastated having to go back through and correct the spelling. So, but that was in me. And I used to do a traverse of my sitting room. So again, don't tell your parents, because I broke the hinges on the 2 doors that went in and out of the sitting room from swinging to bridge the gap from one side of the traverse to the other, because it was the only way across, and the hinge came off the door. So maybe start your traverse on the right of the door and go right, and then finish your traverse when you get to the door, and don't go across the door gap. So I think it's having stuff like, people naturally climb. Babies naturally want to get up stuff. They had a natural fear of falling because it's not good to fall. So there's a lot in us instinctively to start clambering and climbing and moving that way. So it's trying to either keep that if you've not already lost it, or find it again if you've lost it because you didn't climb for a long time until you're an adult maybe. The other thing, I've just been down to the beach, and it's in a cove with some cliffs that we can climb on. So I left my daughter sitting at the beach there, and she was a bit bored and wanted to kind of de-stress of something that had gone on this morning or whatever. And I said, just go and do a bit of traversing. And as I was heading out for my swim, about 50 meters out, and I looked, and she's halfway up the cliff, which is a slab, like, so she knows it very well. But I'm like, I should be fine, and she will be. So but I think traversing at a low level, so you're no higher than your hand can reach, not necessarily halfway up the cliff. so that you can step back off it. That's a safer way to do. And it's a sandy beach. So if you fall off, you could twist your ankle or whatever, but you're not going to cream yourself properly. So just kind of think where you would fall if you're going to go traversing. But it just opens the door to a lot of climbing on your doorstep, potentially, depending on where you live. And the other is the building outside, your house. There might be a wall or a corner of the house that's got some fancy stonework, or that you've got little edges on it, and you could get someone to drill a few things onto the shed wall, or that you can hold on to, or you could put a pull-up bar in the door in your house, so you can do a bit of practice and get some strength going, in using a chair if you can't do a pull-up yet, to take the weight off a bit. If you've got a trampoline in your garden, trampoline is brilliant for movement skills, to get your core strength good and your body awareness about how to move. That's all very useful for climbing. Gymnastics, that's brilliant for climbing practice as well, because you get really strong core and really good at moving your body and using your muscles efficiently, so you don't get too tired too quickly. So like my kids were all drilled into gymnastics when they started, and some of them liked it and some of them didn't, but they're all good kind of core strength now. So that's really good. And swings and trapezes in your garden, all those things that you have in playgrounds, climbing frames. That I think they've banned a lot of climbing frames now, but they put in those cargo nets. They're really good for getting your balance, your agility, your strength, coordination, all of that kind of stuff that you need, your fundamental movement skills for climbing. And then doing a bit of running, a bit of swimming, a bit of biking, just so that you've got good fitness overall, and that you're used to moving, and that you enjoy it. So you're not just climbing all the time and really intense, but you're doing a mixture of things, so you don't get too intense about one thing, that you kind of share it out over the different activities, so that at the end of the day, you have to enjoy what it is that you're doing. So if climbing becomes a chore, then you need to pull it back a bit and do some other things, and kind of find the fun in it again, the reason you started. So it just means that you don't necessarily have to have someone who knows how to set up ropes, or have a climbing wall in your area and have loads of gear. Okay, so it's accessible. Little coastal bits where there's tiny little low-level cliffs. Like obviously, rock is natural. Rock can break off in your hand. So always be thinking about where I'm going to land if I fall, how far I'm going to fall. Is it a safe landing? Am I going too high? Those kind of things. And like everybody, when you talk about climbing to the non-climber, they think automatically of falling and risk and danger and drama and big adrenaline junkies and all of that side of it. And yeah, there's great fun in climbing, but we're actually quite control freaks as well. So we like to manage all of those things, and by putting in protection, using a rope, making it safe, having someone hold the rope for us who knows what they're doing, putting in gear as you climb up so that you don't fall too far if you fall off, all of that. So we're actually quite good at controlling. We like to control the situation as much as possible. But then when we're scared, that can be very useful. I've taught a lot of people to climb when they're lead climbing. So they're putting the gear up and they're setting the routes. And the big thing that might where they've been great climbers on a rope is now they don't feel like they're safe anymore because they could fall. So trying to manage that fear. So being able to tell yourself in your head to concentrate, being able to tell yourself, well, I've put all that gear in, so I know I'm protected from below. I know my belayer knows how to hold the rope properly. I've practiced my moves. I know how to move properly. So that all gives you confidence. And equally to say, well, if I stay here frightened, I'm going to fall off eventually because I run out of steam. If I make the next move, there's a good chance I'll make the next move, and then I can put some more gear in, and so on. So it's being able to play that game of managing your fear. You don't remove it entirely. It's not healthy to, but to be able to kind of play that game of managing it. So there is a bit of thrill in getting to the top and enjoying that you've taken some risk and you've been able to overcome the fear side of it and climb safely. And bouldering, people go quite high bouldering. In competition, they climb to 5 meters. That's quite a long fall. You can do quite a bit of damage falling from that height. So, keep yourself down to hand height when you're bouldering, so you can step down if you need to. And that's the way to keep it fun for you. So in terms of some of the pathways that you can take. So I mentioned mountain skills for hill walkers. There's a rock skills scheme as well. It starts at age 10. The ages don't stay at 10 for all the levels. There's 4 different levels. The bottom one of the intro is about tying on, getting a harness on, knowing how to be in a group and belay one another. The fundamental things so that you could join others climbing. The second one is called the intermediate and is about being a good second on a climb. So you know to tie in and so on and follow someone up a climb, take out the equipment as you go and experience abseiling and so on. After that, the last 2 of the series are how to lead climb. So one on sport where it's bolted and one on traditional where you have to place your own gear. And for those 2, you need to be a little bit older. I think it's 13, 14. The reason I'm not 100% sure is we're reviewing the ages at the minute. I just know that the lower end age is going to be 10 for the early ones. So that's good news for, I think Annie and Eve, you said you were 11, 12-ish. So, you know, it just bridges that gap a little bit lower for people. And the other things that you can get involved in younger than that are the NICAS and NIBAS schemes, the National Indoor Climbing Award and the National Indoor Bouldering Award schemes. And they start, I think, as young as maybe 6 or 8. And it's the climbing walls that run those. And they look a lot at movement and getting people started in climbing, but they're progressive. So you can get better and you can practice. There's a logbook and you can kind of plot what you've done and in them as well. So if you want to get some information about those, just email me afterwards. I'll make a note to put it into the details email afterwards. NICAS, NIBAS, okay, and pathways. All right. There's also a scheme called the Fundamentals, which gets shortened to Funders 1 and 2. And they focus on how to climb. So they can be really useful as well, and they're done in climbing walls as well. So there's actually quite a lot for climbers from a very young age to get involved in some kind of structure of climbing, so that you get good at your skills, movement, what it's about, and so on. All right, so that's all the formal bits out of the way, guys. So the next bit I was going to talk about was just to get started, what equipment you might need. So a pair of runners is about all you need. You want to get a bit fancier, a pair of rock climbing shoes, but you can climb quite hard grade in runners. And you can get away with climbing in runners for quite a while until you need to buy some. But once you do start buying kit, a pair of rock shoes and a chalk bag, that's it, and you can get going. So I have a few shoes I just over the years. So this is like a slipper, and it's a bit like a car tire for racing cars with no grip, no kind of tread on them whatsoever, quite smooth. And they kind of mold to your feet. So when you first try them on, they literally fit like a glove bar. They don't have toes. So they feel like they're too small for you straight away, even your own size. And that's so that you can feel, you've got great sensitivity in a pair of gloves. You can feel everything if they're not loose fitting, but if they're quite close fitting, you can feel to do things, undo carabiners and so on. And it's similar with the climbing shoe. You want them not to be floating around like a runner on your foot, but that they grip your foot. So when you put your foot on a hold, you can feel it through to your toe that you've actually got it on that hold. There's sensitivity in there. So these shoes are slip-on and they're an ankle, they're not a boot. So these are quite good indoors. They wouldn't be as robust maybe for outdoor climbing, but they would work. But I wouldn't be walking around too much in the crag and wearing the rubber down. I might take them off and put my crag shoes on or my runners or whatever I'm going to walk around in to protect these. But they're quite smooth, and they're also quite roundy. There's a little bit of an edge on them, but not a huge amount. Where similar kind of, this is more of a shoe with a lace on it, but you can see there's a much sharper edge on this, and they're a bit more rigid. So they would work nicely on a sharp edge, cracks and things like that. Whereas the roundy ones are better where you're relying a little bit more on your friction and the smearing, which is a term I'll explain a bit better later. But you're a bit like your hand trying to grip something when it's just friction based rather than your hand trying to grip on an edge of something. Okay, so the shoes You can get Velcro ones, they're really handy. Laces are a bit hassle. And these are padded, so it gives your foot room to swell up a little bit, which they will do when they're climbing in the sunny, hot weather that we get in Ireland all the time, or if you're climbing in Europe where you get really hot weather. But also they're comfortable if there's a bit of padding in them. This arch on this one here is quite flat, so it's not too technical. And there's I can see a few shoes there in the background. So most of the ones I pulled out are quite flat shoes. This would be a bit more technical. You can see the curve because you're up on your toes a little bit more on smaller holds. Whereas this, you could get your heel down onto something quite flat as well. If you look at Finn's boot there, you can see there's quite an arch in there. Okay. And again, so you don't necessarily need to go for a very kind of aggressive technical boot to start with. And definitely the advice has changed over the years. When I was kind of starting climbing, they just told us to get the smallest possible shoe you could get your foot into and walk around crippled by it. Just flick it off your heel when you're not climbing to give your foot time to breathe again. Oh yeah, nice. Yeah, but there's really no need for them to be excruciating. So depending on who in the shop you get, they give better or worse advice. But if you're being told get 2 sizes too small and you can't walk in them, you can't move in them, I wouldn't go with that. And especially as kids, because you're growing as well, they won't last you for very long either. So you can go through them very quickly depending on how much you climb. So definitely get ones that are comfortable. You're never going to grow out of a shoe more quickly if it's too small when you start. So and there's a good resale value in shoes. Pass them on, trade them in. Don't be frightened to kind of get secondhand ones from kids because they're not in them that long. So I've got a whole series which are going to be passed through all my kids. And unfortunately, they're getting bigger than me now, so I'm not even going to get the cast-offs anymore because they'll be too big for me. So, but yeah, so there's plenty of shoes. At probably like 50 to 80 quid, depending on what you do. And if you get them secondhand, climbing walls often sell off their old stock. You can get them resold. So if it's got a little hole or a nick in it, doesn't necessarily mean it's the end of it. You can get them resold, and they'll be reasonably good as long as the tops are still good. Okay, so helmets, depending on what you're doing, you'll see lots of climbing images with people with no helmets on. So a lot of climbing walls won't actually let you wear a helmet because there's a risk of it snagging on bolts when you're coming down and that kind of stuff. But some climbing walls, maybe if you see a group from a center, they may have them wearing helmets. So it's just to consider. Things can hit you from above. So if you're climbing outdoors, even you'll see in sport climbers, it's too hot to wear a helmet, and sure, we're on bolts, we're not going to hit anything, but stuff can be knocked off. People can drop gear from above you if you're on multi-pitch, and you can fall off and whack your head into the rock that you've climbed out over. So I would recommend you wear helmets. You can get quite lightweight, airy feeling helmets, but they all meet the standards, the international standards. And to get them nice, yeah, thank you. If you hold it up there, Finn, to protect when you're wearing them, they need to come down to your brow. Okay, you often see people with the helmet right back on the back of the head because they're not fitted properly. So make sure they're snug so that they sit over the brow to protect the front bit and also to protect at the back, and that the strap, it should make a Y around your ear, not back here or in front there, but actually so that it comes down. Thank you, Finn. You can be the demo man there. Perfect. So that Y should come down to a point beneath your ear, and then the chin strap. So once you have your own helmet, you adjust it properly once. Read the instructions in it, it'll tell you how to do as well. Adjust it properly once and then make sure it's fitting. So as well, when you put your helmet on and shake your head, it shouldn't be rolling around on your head. It should stay pretty much where it should be. If it's rolling around, it's too loose. You all wear helmets for cycling and, other disciplines, or you should. So yes, it's not just about you not needing one. It's stuff can fall on you, and it's very sore. They're designed to take the impact, not your head. So wear them is all I can say. Um, so I talked a little bit in the last session about harnesses. There's a number of them, and there's a great video on our website about how to put them on. They have a waist belt, they have 2 leg loops, and our demo man is back in action there. Thank you. I still can't find my kind of traditional harness. It's in a rucksack somewhere. I've searched high and low for it. I think it was last, I don't know, December time before I last used it. But anyway, so plenty of harnesses on the market. They all have the standard stamps on them as well, so they've been tested. CE marks and the date marks are in there as well. So Finn's just organising his, but the format of a harness is a waist belt and 2 leg loops, and they're joined in various ways together. So when you tie on, you're tying on between the belt loop and the leg loops so that you're attached. But I just direct you to the video to see the video on it. It's 2 or 4 minutes long, and you can have a look at that. So if you're going to climb outdoor and go bouldering, thanks Finn, Jan, then you'll need a pair of boots and a chalk bag. That's your kit, and you can climb indoors, outdoors with that. If you're going to go to do a little bit more, you'll need a belay plate, and a carabiner. So just to show you a little picture. I don't know how well you're going to be able to see this because it's quite small. So if you just come in, is that reasonably easy to see? So you can see I've put a photograph of a lot of different types of belay plates, and you see the way there's a bend of rope is pushed through a device of some type, and then it's captured on the back with the carabiner. That bend of rope is called a bite. So if you hear me talking about take a bite of rope and push it through the belay plate, that's what they've done there with all those belay devices. You might have seen these in the climbing wall, the gree, that locks, almost 100% locks. You should never let go of them, but it's seen as a good device because it kind of partially locks. If someone didn't do their job properly, it would help. All the other devices, well, all belays, you need to keep your hand on to make sure that the rope doesn't run freely out of them again. Okay, Finn's got one of those, I think. Some of these devices in this image are quite elderly, quite old. But have you got a device there, girls? I can't see because you've got bright light behind you, so it's kind of hard to tell. Do you have a belay device? Nope, no worries. So there's plenty of devices there, but again, they're not that expensive. 1 carabiner, 1 belay plate, and then your shoes and your chalk bag, and you can go into a climbing wall. Then they have ropes set for people to use, and there's the chalk bag being shown. This is my retro chalk bag. This was my very first chalk bag from back in the 80s. With all the old 80s colours, which are now, I believe, coming back in again. I think they came back in the 90s. But this is a retro bag, still has chalk in it, which is my first chalk bag. And I think it was second hand when I got it. So they last. And that's just like a gymnast. It's just to take the sweat off your fingertips and help with grip on holds, but to be used sparingly. So the other thing as a young climber that you may also see used in climbing walls is a belay bag. So it gives you ballast because obviously you're not as heavy at a younger age because you're just smaller. You're not fully grown yet. So you may often see people using belay bags to give them more ballast and more weight to hold them down to the ground, and they might clip that to the back of their harness through the waist loop or something like that, just so that you're not going to go flying up if your climber falls off. They come down and you go flying up the other side of the wall. So you can use those in the outdoors in different ways as well, by putting a sling around a tree and attaching yourself to it, or finding a ground anchor, putting a sling around a boulder or something that will take a pull up. That can be useful if you're climbing, say, with a parent who's much heavier than you, to try and help back up, because that's another difficulty from a parent's perspective. My kids are not heavy enough yet. My eldest might be, two of them would be, three of them would be. So I might use the three of them as ballast so that they're not going to get lifted off the ground if I happen to fall off something. So that it can be difficult. So when you do climb in the wall, though, because the rope's going from the bottom all the way up to the top and down again, they're not taking the full weight of you. They're taking a portion of that. But it's still a lot when you have a fallen body. It still can lift you off your feet. Okay. So then if you want to head outside, you're going to need a bit more kit then. If you want to start climbing on your own, rope, a harness, a helmet, and then a rack of gear. So this, all the metal work and so on, your protection with wires, friends. And if you're doing that indoors, slightly less amount of gear. You'll need these for outdoors as well, but this is what you'll need in indoors because it's bolted. So you'd need a set of these to cover enough of the bolts to clip into, and then you can clip your rope onto. Yeah, good stuff, girls. Thank you. Demo team is working away. So again, that's why a lot of people learn to lead climb indoors first, because you need less kit and you don't have to know how to place gear, just how to clip the bolts. So, which there is a skill to as well. So you can build up, you can boulder relatively free, and you can traverse for free, and you can start your climbing movement repertoire, developing that from beginning. And then you can choose when you want to start to lead the climb and when you want to start rope climbing and so on, and gradually build up your kit. Christmas present list, birthday present list, vouchers for outdoor shops, not bookshops. I never said that. But bookshops do sell climbing guidebooks, so, also very useful. So now that I mentioned guidebooks, so these are just a few I just picked off the shelf this morning. And I can't find my Dorky guidebook. It's in one of my bags, which is like my local crag. So Wicklow, this is the most used of my guidebooks. It's quite an old book, but I kept a record of all the routes that I've done in this, kind of little comments and stuff, like a diary. So it's really nice kind of when you look back and you remember what you were doing and when you were starting out and really scared, and it might be on some of the lower grades that you were climbing at the beginning, and you have your epic journey and you've been really scared and you got up it anyway. And it's just really nice then to look back and see how you've progressed and what route you came. There you go. Yeah, and you can create your own climbing book as well, because there's great online facilities for climbing.ie. If you're a member of Mountaineering Ireland as well, we have a digital logbook, and you can look up different crags. Yep. And you can put all the data and make a record of your own, of what you've done, bouldering, scrambling, climbing, hill, whatever it is that you like, and then just start adding to it. You've got these kind of, we used to go on trips every year to Europe to go sport climbing in the winter, with their winter, which would be like our summer. And you'd have these just topos of somewhere nice and hot and sunny that was all bolted, and just go and climb and bring a minimal amount of gear on your plane when you're getting there. And just every evening you'd come back from your climbing happy, and you'd all make a big meal together, sit around with the guidebooks and plan where you're going to go the next day, and just repeat for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, whatever time you have, and then come back really climbing fit for the beginning of the outdoor season at home. So the guidebooks are really good because you can sit and read them and make plans and have aspirations and bucket lists and all of that to keep you going. But also you can find really nice areas to go bouldering from them as well, that side of it. So time, doing too badly. So do you want me to show you any of the climbing videos? I can share a screen and show you a quick one if that would be helpful. Yeah. And then we're going to get out of our chairs and do some moving. So I'm just going to share a screen, so just bear with me. Thank you. While I get into the website. Okay. So I'm going to just show you how to get into. Right, so I've just gone into our website. Can you all see that? Yeah. So this is us today and our banner. This is the last one. So I'm just going to click into the top here into mountain training and into the side here, skills videos. We are doing a job on the website at the moment. It's in development. So there's a list of videos here. Looks very familiar to what you've just seen me. So that was the Winter Skills series. So as you scroll down with these videos, there's about 20 of them now. So it's taken a while, probably because there's navigation winter. Forgive me, it's taken a while to come through now. Winter, and then there's a few as I call them. So the scrambling rope work, so that was one I mentioned to you guys last week, and movement skills for walkers is actually quite a good watch for climbers. Very rarely you teach someone how to walk because you've all done it and forgotten how to do it, and you just do it, and then you find some people are really clumsy at walking and have to kind of be shown how to walk so they don't keep tripping up and stuff. So that movement skills for walkers is actually quite useful for climbers as well. There's plenty of videos on how to move as a climber, loads and loads coming out your ears if you go onto YouTube. That's the mountain leader rope work. There's belay construction, which we'll talk about. I might show you that in a minute. How to belay a leader. And then there's more nav. Let me just scroll down through those. Bearings, map setting, and so on. I don't think there are any shots on. More nav, access, more nav. There's a map skills series as well. And then a couple of webinars on archaeology, and Claire Sheridan is she's I don't know what you would call her. She's an amazing climber. You should just watch the conversation. She's yeah, an inspiration, I have to say. But I'll pick one of the climbing shorts. So what do you want to watch? Setting up a top rope, or what do you want to see? Actually, where's my putting on a harness one gone? I think it's in a different section. I'll show you that in a minute. Okay, I'm going to show you belay construction. So this is just typically
Are we supposed to be hearing anything?
Can you hear it? Can you not hear? Oh, I'm sorry. Fasten. I can do. I thought you could hear. I can do the voiceover if you wish. Do you want me to rewind and do it? Yeah. Sorry, guys. I thought the sound came across to you as well. I'll try and do the voiceover again. It's myself talking anyway, so hopefully I can wing that. So bear with me. In this short instructional video, I'll be looking at the key principles of sound belay construction and providing you with a few tips and tricks to take away with you to use when assessing your own belay setups. First thing to do when constructing a belay is to select sound anchors. In this example, we've got a thread anchor, which I've put a sling around. It's important to select enough anchors to make a safe belay. In most situations, I would suggest a minimum of 2 anchors should be used. This is to provide a backup and stability to your system. There are 3 types of anchors: threads, spikes, or placed gear. Obviously, whatever type you select, they must be solid. Once you've selected your anchors, they can then be linked by a sling or by a rope, as I'm going to show you later. The angle created by joining your anchors should not exceed 90 degrees, as this overloads each anchor. I use what I call the rule of thumb to check that the angle created is not wider than the gap between my finger and my thumb. After flaking the rope, I'm going to tie a figure of 8 into the end with a stopper knot and clip it into the anchor furthest away from the edge of the climb. Fasten the gate and check it's closed, and then clip into the second anchor, fasten the gate, and check it's closed, and take the strands from both to the top of the climb. Keeping back from the edge, I take all 4 strands and tension and equalize them, gather them together, and tie a big overhand knot through all of them. I tighten each of the 4 strands coming out of each side of the overhand knot. Again, I use the rule of thumb to check that the angle created is not wider than the gap between my finger and my thumb. Then I take a central loop and fasten it onto my harness with the carabiner. That's the harness I can't find. I can then stretch myself to the edge. The rope should be tight behind me, and I should just about be able to see down the climb, but no further. From the other side, you can see me clipping on, fastening the gate, checking it's fastened and checking my harness, and checking the anchors before I move towards the edge. In this setup, I have to sit down because my anchors are low to the ground. I then need to flake the rope into a pile to the side of me and shout below before I throw the end down to the climber. I pull in the slack and attach the rope to the belay plate. In this situation, the belay plate is attached to the loop in my harness. Fasten the gate, check it. In summary, check both anchors are equally loaded, independently tied off, and solid, that the angle falls within the rule of thumb, and finally, that the anchor, the belayer, and the climber are all in a straight line, and that you can lock back your belay plate fully. Now you're ready to start belaying your climber. So in summary, we need to make sure that the anchors are sound, independent, equally loaded, anchors within the rule of thumb. Belayer, tight on anchors, in line with the climb, in view of the climber, in communication with the climber. Climber should be tied on, tight on the rope at all times, in communication with the belayer. Direction, straight as an arrow, from anchor to belayer to climber. Constructing belays takes an experienced and judgment. This video is intended to refresh previously learned skills and not to replace the need for proper instruction. If you're unsure, please seek further advice. Wow, that's been a long time since I did that voiceover. It's a bit wooden sounding, isn't it? Anyway, it's quite a dense, packed video. So just to stress that, I'm not expecting that you're going to go off now and set up belays and use them. Oh, oh, hang on. Sorry. Let me just go out a minute. Sorry. The screen share, the video was carried on there in the background. I don't know if you could hear that or not, but my apologies. So yeah, so there's a few videos like that, but you need to be trained, and you need someone there that knows what they're doing to be able to check what you're doing is correct. So I'm not trying to teach you to set up a top rope like that. It takes years of experience, or years of someone else's experience, to kind of set them up for you to begin with, and so on. But it's good to understand how the safety system is working. So that's the kind of videos that we have there. There's also a climbing section on the website as well, which I think is where the putting on the harness video is. And but I'll let you know where those links are. They should be where they were, but they've maybe been moved. Okay, so there's quite a lot of videos there that you can have a look at in bits. So I said we'd get moving now. We've a few different things that we can do for the crack, and it's going to be interesting. I don't know how I'm going to keep an eye on folk, but what I'm going to get you to do, climbing is very much about muscle and movement, as the girls are demonstrating there, and sitting still is not what it's about, and that's why it's really difficult to sit still and listen to talking about it. So one thing I'm going to get you to start to do is just stand up for me, and don't worry whether you're still in screen or not, and stand with your feet. I'll see how far I can move away to do this. Yeah, you can still see. So if you're standing, what I want you to do is to stand with your feet about shoulder width apart and in balance. And if you try and keep everything where it is and just lift one leg and see what happens. Just lift a leg. No, keep everything where it is. So do not move your hips over to keep balanced, and your shoulders, and put your arms out to balance. Just keep everything where it is on your 2 feet and just lift one leg. Do nothing else. You're not falling over. Because if you have your 2 legs there, you should fall over if you lift one leg. Yeah. So try it again. Because what you're doing is right. The fact that you're not falling over is exactly what you should be doing. But I'm asking you to do something that's not what you would normally do. So lift a leg, and what happens? Yeah. You have to correct, don't you? Because otherwise we'd be rolling around the floor all the time. So the reason why I'm mentioning that is you're all climbing, you're all kids, well, not all of you, but the rest of you are kids in your head. You naturally correct your balance and move your hips over your foot that's holding the weight of you, move your shoulders, move your head, put your arms out if you're feeling a bit wobbly. You naturally do all of those corrections. We're experts at it generally when we're walking, but when you put someone on a climbing wall, they forget. They try to lift one foot without moving their weight across onto it. And then they try and put their foot on a hold without putting any weight onto it. And they can't understand why it doesn't grip anymore, because they've not moved onto it. So what I want you to do now, and I'll have to stay here because I want to watch, is to get down like a crocodile would, with your hands and your feet on the floor, or your knees if that's awkward. You can get onto the knees as well, actually, instead. I won't be too mean. And I want you to walk along so that you don't fall over this time. So just walk along on your hands and your knees and tell me what you're doing. Right, yeah, your hands and knees are fine. And you need to turn on your microphones and just tell me what it is that you're doing so that you don't fall over. Like when I lifted my foot, what's stopping me from falling over?
You're rocking your body back and forth.
Yeah. Yeah. So you're doing that. So you're transferring your weight onto whichever arm or leg is holding the weight. And tell me, how are you moving your hands and feet?
At the same time.
So are you moving your 2 hands at the same time, or? your right hand and your your right leg at the same time? How are you actually moving them?
Yeah, kind of
Opposite arm to opposite leg.
Opposite. Sorry, I don't have a lot of room here. So like you're climbing a ladder, opposites. Can't see my knees. Okay. What I want you to try, and are you walking like this with your hands, or are you like that, wide? Okay. So if you try now to do the same exercise, so those of you that maybe hadn't clocked that that's what you were doing, just walk normally wide. Again, just go up and down, and then the next time you do it, pretend you're walking on a tightrope. Okay. So first time you do it, just feet shoulder and hands shoulder width apart, and knees or whatever. So you're doing one knee opposite opposite hand, and that's why you're able to balance. And then the second time you're doing it, pick a line. If I can see you're on a wood floor there, so just use one line of the wood. Yeah, perfect. And try and walk along a straight line, and try and crawl along a straight line. So use your hands and feet in that alternate. Okay. What happens when you try and do it on a narrow line?
it's definitely harder.
Yeah, it's harder to balance, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because you don't have that wide, stable base. Okay, so there's a bit of learning in that as well. Like a wide, stable base when you're climbing, it can be very useful. But sometimes you're climbing in a crack and you don't have the opportunity to be wide. You have to be narrow. So you have to be even more in tune with keeping things lined up. So you might hang off to put a bit of side pull on something and drop your shoulders around to stay in that narrow crack. And you might change your hips as well when you're doing the same. So the way Anne and Eve, you were doing a bit of a piggyback kind of ride there, weren't you? Would you be a demo for me? If you two move back away, you've asked for it now, but if you two move back away, and if one of you do what you were doing, do it with a wide base, with your yeah, that's it, with your cargo, if you're able. Now walk along towards the camera there. Yeah. Okay, so it's not too bad for the ride. Now, if you go back and see if it's possible to do that, I'm just looking at the fireplace next to you, on a single line, and just see if it's more tricky. Just be careful to try and walk and do your knees on a single board. Yeah, it's tricky, and the tipping point there is far more likely to go. Okay, so when you're climbing, so again, we talked about this ladder, wide base, but if you're climbing sometimes, people forget to do that opposite arm leg thing. They try and move both things at the same time. When you're climbing one over the other as you would in a crack, it's good to remember that you're counterbalancing, because that's what you're doing. You're putting one leg and one arm opposite to each other. So you end up kind of dropping the shoulder and then dropping the shoulder and dropping the shoulder and doing the same with the leg to balance. And you probably find when you're doing that, you might stick a leg out to the side to try and counterbalance it. Yeah. It's a natural thing to do. It's great to see all these people getting up off the floor again. But it's a natural thing to do that. And doing it on the horizontal, like you've just done, makes it a little bit more obvious. So when you're back out on the wall again, maybe pick a line of holds or whatever it is that you climb on, and just think about what I'm talking about here, that straight line thing. I'm not saying you should climb on a straight line, but some climbs mean you have to. And what you're doing with your leg or your limb hanging it out there to balance. What you did, girls, when I asked you first to take a foot off the floor and you put your arms out to balance, that's what we do to kind of get the weight and the loading on your feet. So it's great. It's amazing what you can get adults to do. Sorry. Anyway, I won't go there. It is though. It's amazing, but it's kind of back to the fundamentals. What you learned when you first learned to crawl and walk, as we develop when we kind of are born and become adults eventually. If you ever become an adult, what you learn, those movements, it's all about moving efficiently. So I think to rekindle those or to keep them fresh when you're climbing, you're nearly better off looking at how you move walking and then try and translate those back into how you might move climbing, because you're good at walking. And so you can use the climbing skills. So it's just 12 o'clock. So some of the key things around those movement things to kind of have a think about. Think about the opposite hand foot thing. Think about how you use your hands. So most of you'll have a table or a desk or something around you. So I'm sitting at a desk here. So I'm going to reach my fingers out forward and over the end of the desk. So like this, okay? So you just need something that you can get your hands onto. You know, it could be that, yeah, perfect. Bring it on over, guys. So you can reach your hands over the top of something, either flat or be able to hook behind. So that would be the best type of hold that we like to have, the jug. Okay, so the girls' one is more of an open-handed hand hold, but it is curved. That would be more flat palm, curved hand. The other way on my table, I can get my fingers under the front edge of the table. So you might reach your hands under the front edge of that footstool, down at the bottom in front of your knees. Bring your hand, yeah, so under the lip. That would be like an undercut. You can have your hands this way or this away. And you could also reach your hands around the side of that block, the footrest. Yeah. So getting your elbows and bringing them around the sides so that you can pull on things from the side. So lean this way if you need to get your line up, or lean that away. So a lot of new climbers think only of holds this direction. But you have a whole series of movements. You can turn them both, you can twist them both. Just to give you more ideas, I suppose. Some things come more naturally. So that's a whole set of stuff you can do just with handholds to make it interesting. And the other one, I've been looking around my office today about what I could use for various things. So the radiator next to the wall is a really good one to talk about jamming. So you probably all got something. What you need is something that's got a gap in it, like the radiator and the wall. So there's the radiator, and then there's a gap between it and the wall. And the gap is fixed. So that lid, yes, there's a gap, but that lid is going to move if you move your hand into it. So I don't know if I won't be able to get the video to go into the gap, but it means you can put your fingers into a space and maybe twist two fingers into it to make it wider when I put them in. Or I need another camera really. But you can also put your hand into a parallel and then make it fatter and press against it. And you can add your thumb into the equation to make your hand fatter in a widening. You can also make a fist into a gap like this or that, so that you can fist jam, or you can do it like this with your hand flat or balled up, or this or that. So there's lots of different directions, and you can play around with your hands to hold on to things more than just the kind of classic hook onto something. And the other thing I would suggest to you as well, if you know a pull-up bar, is it easier to hang on a pull-up bar or easier to stay kind of cranked up on a pull-up bar? Yeah, why? And I know these are easy questions. Hey, why is it easier to hang on a pull-up bar than it is to be cranked up on it?
Because your muscles aren't as tensed.
The muscles aren't as tensed?
You don't have to like hold your entire weight in one position, like all up.
Is that exactly it? It's not, I know, because I can see by your face it's not what you mean, but you're trying to explain something, but it can be hard to say what you mean. But so the reason why, because you're still like, you can't make yourself lighter just by straightening your arms. You're still the same weight, aren't you? So that's why your face was screwing up there, because you're not saying what you know what you mean, but it's hard to say it. The difference is you're hanging on a joint as opposed to pulling on a muscle, and the muscles here are working hard, whereas like that your grip is working, but you're hanging on a joint. So gymnasts hang, and then you see them. You watch my shoulders now. They start to, they pull up just in the shoulders. So the arms haven't moved at all, but they're engaging the shoulder muscles. And we do that in climbing a lot, but you're not necessarily conscious you're doing it. So if you want to reach, just get your head a little bit higher when you're hanging on your bar, just engage the shoulders and start to pull up. And you can do that when you're climbing on one shoulder. My arm isn't going anywhere, but I can bring my other shoulder up high. So now I can reach higher, or I can leave it down and try and reach, but I won't get so high. So try and move away a bit so you can see. You see my fingers are just reaching the top of my screen. So without my shoulder raised there, with my shoulder raised, I can get a bit higher. Okay. I think that, you can call it shoulder locking or whatever you want to call it, but it's just joints. You can relax a little bit and hang on longer. Cranked up like this, your muscles are going to fatigue fairly quickly. And then using the shoulders to get height and mobility without just the whole time trying to drag yourself up, that you can use them, rotate and grab a bit higher and rotate and grab a bit higher and so on. So just some things to kind of have a think about the next time you're moving again. The other side of it, I suppose, there's a lot in the core of your body. So you can use, have your core engaged. Do you know what I mean by that? If you think of it, depends whether you do trampolining or swim or those things where if you're all kind of relaxed when you're trampolining, you'd be like a rag doll. But if you've engaged your core and you can draw your muscles and be in control, then you'll move accurately. You won't be floppy like a rag doll. So that's something definitely to consider. How is that all, tensioned and engaged? So with the foot end of things, again, like with your hands, you've got, if this is the shoe pointing into the climbing wall, you can put it on footholds like this, but also you can put them sideways onto the foothold, inside and outside edge. You don't have to just toe bung and hit into holds, because that will keep your leg out and away and your body back off the wall. Whereas if you turn your foot sideways, that will bring your hips in a bit closer. It might make it easier to put your weight over your feet. Whereas if you have them forward on, and your weight's going to be backwards and away from it, and put more weight onto your arms. Okay, so shoes are designed to be climbed inside big toe edge and little toe edge, and the very front if you need to. You can also use the heels for climbing. You can sometimes hook it around the corner. Remember we were talking about this climbing and you were maybe getting no balance when Annie dropped her passenger because she was trying to climb narrow like that and she has no stability. So if you're climbing in a crack, then sometimes hooking your heel around the corner can stop you from swinging around. Yeah. So you can use the heel as well to hook onto things or to kind of push against something. And you can use your toe, you've got your other foot in a good foothold and there's no other hold for this, but you can still use it to kick off and get a bit of friction on the rock surface. What else with your feet? I was going to say, so this smooth surface I described earlier, I said I'd come back to talking about smearing. If you are pressing on, if you imagine somebody abseiling, sliding down the rope, they don't just fall down the surface. They don't just want to let themselves just be dragged along. They put their feet out in front of them, don't they, to push their body away from the rock. And to do that, they put their feet flat on the wall. And what that's like, why don't their feet just fall off? Because there's weight pushing from their legs into the wall and there's friction, gripping. So when you're climbing, there's nothing to stop you pressing your foot flat against the wall with good handholds and creating a friction foothold. There's not necessarily any edge there, but the weight of your leg and body pushing into it creates friction, and that's called smearing. And it's really useful on slabs where you're not on, maybe it wouldn't necessarily work too well on an overhang because you can't really get the weight on it, but where it's slabby or near vertical, you can use it to really good effect. to bolster where you've got no footholds, if you've got really good handholds. So edges on, corners and ledges, smearing on smooth stuff, but it's, rock has got friction to it mostly. And then sides, inside, outside edge. And the benefit of that inside, outside edge, if you stand up again, so you can't see my feet, but I want you to be on your feet while you're doing this. So if you've got again, we talked about that ladder and climbing. So if we have our toes pointing into the wall in front of us, the ladder climb, our hips are kind of back, if you like, and our shoulders are back. If I turn, I'm going to pick one foot, my right foot, okay, so this side for me, and I'm going to turn my toe in towards the other foot. Okay, so I'm going to swing my heel around so that my hip now twists my body. My shoulders come forward, and this hip has come forward, the same hip. Okay, and it's turned me sideways on. It's a bit uncomfortable for the other foot, but I'm going to put my foot back and I'm going to turn the other heel out. Okay, so that's turning my body sideways onto the wall. And if I'm trying to use the side of my feet, it helps. It brings the weight of my hip over my foot that I'm turning. It takes it off the other one. So you can probably feel the one I've turned is loaded. It's got my weight on it, but the other one I could nearly lift off the ground quite easily. Okay, so it's a great way when you twist to take the weight off one foot onto the other. I really can get anyone to do anything. It's great. But if I turn my foot now, are you getting that, guys? Yeah. So if I twist it, so now what I'm going to do, I'm going to take the same right leg again, and I'm going to turn my heel in this time. I'm going to turn it into my other foot, not the toe. Okay. So that is making my knee turn out that way, where before I was turning it in, my knee was going the other way. So now my knee is going out the way, and that's moving my hip back and away from that foot. So that foot I've turned has got no weight on it now. You getting that? This foot, this side. So if I want to use that foot that I've turned this way, I have to lean onto it. And now it's loaded. Okay, and now I can lift the back one off the ground. So do you want to try that again? I'm not sure. I can't. It's really difficult when I can't see you doing it. But like I can't see your feet. But so if we go again. So this side, I'm going to turn my toe into my other foot. So my hip to the wall. Okay, so I can keep my weight on this side easily. And then back. And now I'm going to turn my toe that away. And it's hard to put my weight on that one now, isn't it? Without, I have to move on to it. Okay, so if you're climbing and you're using inside edge, outside edge, it can help you transfer weight, or can dictate that you have to transfer weight. So if you point your toe where you're going, you'll have to put your weight onto it. You point your heel, it will put the weight onto it. Okay, that makes sense? I'm just conscious of the time. We've about 15 minutes left, guys. So these are just things to try out, and don't worry if you're not getting them all, because when you look back, you kind of go, oh yeah, and it'll click, or you'll try it at the climbing wall and it'll make sense. The benefits of swinging those feet inside, outside edge are it helps you with your reach as well. So if I'm putting my heel out this way, suddenly when I'm face on, these earphones aren't long enough. When I'm face on to something with my toes, I can reach so far, or I can reach so far. So just there, I can reach so far. If I turn my heel that away, I can reach off the screen now. You see that? So if I have my feet forward, I can get my fingertips there. If I turn my heel, I can reach off the screen, so I can get further. And because I've got weight on this one, I can actually reach much further without even moving any steps away. So together, pointing forwards, I can reach. If I turn my heel, I can reach much further. And if I turn my toe, I'm a bit more limited until I weight it, and then I can reach even further again. So it's something to consider. It's a bit of a whistle stop on here, but It's something to consider when you can't quite reach a hold. Can I change my feet to help me reach further? Even if it's just to get to the hold or the bolt, clip it and then step back, because it's not a very comfortable position to progress on or to move forward on, but it gives me that extra reach. Is that making sense to people? Yeah. So make a few diagrams, drawings, notes, or whatever while it means something to you. I used to make little models for rope setups, but you could equally get, I think it's IKEA or somewhere that sell those magnetic men or the figures that you can put on your cooker, and they've got like strings for arms but magnets for hands, and you can kind of move them around on a magnet board. So you could do some diagrams of movement and so on. And there are plenty, sorry, grab my seat. There are plenty of videos, some good, some not so good, as always, on how to move, where there'll be people actually moving as opposed to us standing in our sitting rooms or crawling around on our floors and so on. But I think sometimes to do them in a setting like that will help you remember that it's unusual, I suppose. Just see, chat. Okay, so let me just see if I'm missing anything else. Oh yeah, the last walking one that I wanted to do with you, and it's just fun to do, but I'm trying to remember. Oh yeah, it's to help develop balance. I'm trying to justify why I wanted to do it. So we talked when we were crawling around on our hands and knees and walking. So when we normally walk, we walk our feet apart. We don't do the catwalk model of kind of walking like this across ourselves, or the middle ground where we don't generally walk like that. But I want you to try to walk like this along your straight line again. So if you want to just hop up for a second and just walk straight. And do whatever you need to do with your body to balance this time. I don't want you to fall over. Okay, great stuff. So what I want you to do this time, I think most of you seem to be looking at your feet. Most of you are looking where you're stepping. I want you to do the first one looking at your feet, and the second one, pick a point of where you're trying to get to and walk to that. So the first time looking where you're putting your feet. And then the second time, pick a point to get to. Don't look at your feet, but walk to the point. And tell me what difference, how does it feel? So either stick something in the chat or put on the microphone. But what was the difference?
I actually kind of found that easier when I wasn't looking at my feet.
Yeah. Anyone else similar or different?
You're more relaxed whenever you're like just walking to a point, where whenever you're looking at your feet, you're going like, well, I want to stand here, and yeah.
Yeah, your attention's drawn, isn't it, to whichever it is. Anyone else? Any other feedback on that? Observations?
Yeah, it's easier to go where you're looking.
Yeah.
Where you want to be.
Yeah, there's a few different reasons for that. If you're a kayaker and you look where you want to go, but often you look where you don't want to go. It's like, I don't want to get into that waterfall or into that eddy, or I want to get into that eddy, but you look at the rock that you don't want to hit, and you go where your head looks, because your head is very heavy. And particularly as kids, your head is proportionately heavy until your body is caught up with the size of it, if you like. So that is one aspect of it. Less really to do, but if you move your head around when you're climbing, it's going to be quite a pendulum, quite an effect on just the balance of you. But generally it's dictated by where your shoulders and your hips are going. It kind of goes with it. So, but if you are looking, you tip your head, you are going to be thrown off a little bit. But it's when you look down at your feet when you're climbing, it's really important. You have to, I'm not saying don't look where you put your feet, you have to look and then place your foot exactly where it should be. Don't just not look and just randomly put it roughly in the vicinity. That will not work. So I'm not saying don't look where you're going, but you need to also not forget when you're trying to balance, you need to look where you're trying to get to, not down at your feet. If you're carrying a tray of drinks, looking at the drinks will pretty much ensure you're going to spill them. Whereas if you look where you're going, they'll stay flat and you'll get where you're going generally. So that's a waiter's tip or waitress's tip. So I learned that from practicing balance on a tightrope, a low one, obviously. Nice, I like that. And if you look where you're going at the end, you're more likely to get across those tight ropes than if you look at your feet. You'll just start wobbling. So just bear that in mind when it comes to balance exercises. And go riding, do gymnastics, do trampolining, swim. All be really good for your core and your coordination. I'm going to have to, I think, stop. Is there anything you would like me to talk about before we go? No, enough's enough. I'll send a few links in the video after. And do have a look at some of the videos. Do get outside your house or traverse your rooms, but do exclude the doors. Find places, beams, walls. We used to climb through tables, under them and over them. Broomsticks we used to try and step through. All of those kind of movement games, just to get your repertoire and your problem solving on climbs. How can I get up this? If you've done all those kind of crazy things with beams and poles and broomsticks and whatever else, then when you do get onto a climb that's quite tricky, it gives you a bit of a repertoire of, oh yeah, I could try this, you know, the different hand holds, the different directions of holding on to things, moving your body around to see what effect it has on the grip that you have on the hold and so on, straightening your arms, bending your knees so that you can straighten your arms. Those kinds of things can be really helpful when you're climbing, and it means you'll naturally go to the best type of move quickly. And that's how, when you see a really good climber, they just seem to glide up and they don't seem to be tired because they're not wasting any energy. They just know exactly how to, and they can read what way to tackle the move. And that's just from climbing and practicing and building up your skills. Okay, guys. Well, listen, I hope you've enjoyed the series, and I will put the videos up. They will be raw, not edited. I don't really have time to do too much of that. So I'm going to stop the record now. So thanks very much. It's been a pleasure. It's been such a joy, actually. It's been such a long time to teach young people, I have to say, and it's great. Keeps you sane.
Thanks very much, James. It's been brilliant.
You're very welcome.